Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Eccentric, the makers of the K-Box and the new K-Pulley. Guys, flywheel training's really grown in popularity of late, and although it's something that's been around for a while, the simple reason that it's grown in popularity is because it works. We've been lucky to have a K-Box in our weight room for the past 3 years, and we've seen some really great things when it comes to improving the athlete's ability to change direction, and then looking at our return to play protocols with different lower body injuries with the student athletes. The love-hate relationship that everyone has with the K-Box is now just going to grow more with the addition of the K-Pulley. The ability to do standing presses, pulls, rip-throughs, and knee drive exercises is just going to be another arsenal to our training and another addition to the love-hate relationship that our student athletes have with the awesome tools that come from Eccentric. Go ahead and hop over to eccentric.com today to check out what they have. Guys, I can't recommend it enough, and I guarantee you won't be disappointed, not just with the products, but with the awesome customer service that Eccentric provides. Hey everybody, if you enjoy the podcast and the content that it provides, make sure you hop over and check out the all-new Strength Coach Network. The Strength Coach Network is a combination of the CVA SPS community and the Rugby Strength Coach community, bringing you what is sure to be the internet's leading resource for continuing education for strength and conditioning professionals. Combining these two resources has allowed us to bring some of the best content from some of the best minds in the world together for your one-stop shop to better improve the continuing education for not just yourself, but your entire staff. Bringing together all of the lectures from the Rugby Strength Coach community, along with the lectures exclusively done for the Central Virginia Sport Performance community, and all the lectures performed at the Central Virginia Sport Performance Seminar, make this an absolute must for performance coaches around the world. The world-class lectures at the Strength Coach Network are not all that you'll see as well. The discussion in the forums and the support and the career guidance from some of the top practitioners in the world, from people all over the world, makes this an absolute must and a great place for you to network, learn, and grow as a performance professional. So hop on over to strengthcoachnetwork.com and use the code CVASPS, that's C-V-A-S-P-S, to get your 48-hour trial for only $1. We're sure you're going to find great value in the Strength Coach Network and are really excited to have you involved. So hop on over to strengthcoachnetwork.com and use the code CVASPS to check it out today. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, guys, we have an absolutely sensational discussion talking about the role of higher education in developing coaches with Chris Toombs. After Chris gives us kind of his background from coaching into academia and from Great Britain to the States and back again, we get right into it and where he sees the importance of having people who have that in the trenches knowledge, if you may, in academia, helping coaches to understand the real life situations of coaching, not just, what the textbooks say and the science behind all of it. We then start talking about behavior changes and how he utilized different things as a coach to get his athletes to do or buy in or make changes to their lifestyles, and how he is educating and teaching young coaches some of those tricks of the trade, if you may, in today's classes that he's teaching. We finish off talking about the direction that he sees academia going when it comes to developing coaches and how important that is in the future and how he sees that evolving even more as we progress forward. Guys, this is really an awesome talk. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Let's get right to it. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, Jay. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so listen, let's let the people know who you are, how you got there, what you're working on now, and what's got you excited.
Okay, great. Well, do you want the short version or the long version? Because I've basically been in the fitness industry and strength and conditioning for 25 years now. So I don't want to give away my age, but pretty much started out as a personal trainer, having left university in the mid-1990s, where there weren't too many strength and conditioning degrees, and there certainly weren't too many masters of strength and conditioning kicking around. Just found my feet in the fitness industry really for, like I say, 7 years, worked in London, England, that is, and just literally stumbled across a professional sports job just as the English Institute of Sport was coming into its fruition with regards to sort of formalizing strength and conditioning provision of service for athletes in and around London. from there, mate, I was very, very lucky to get myself a professional sports job working for Leicester Tigers, who at the time were a pretty prominent and still are a pretty prominent professional rugby team. I worked at the academy level, developing their kind of under 21 age group players and transitioned into the first team. After I left Leicester Tigers, I went down to Wales, where I ended up working for the Cardiff Blues for nearly a decade. That's across a multitude of roles, primarily in the first 2 or 3 years, working with academy age group players. And then as some of the academy age group players transitioned into their senior full-time professional rugby careers, I ended up getting promoted with those guys. So I had another 6 years working in the first team at Cardiff Blues, which was a very, very fulfilling role. Saw a lot of young players develop into pretty senior and world-renowned international rugby players, which was, very satisfying as a strength and conditioning coach. And unfortunately, like every S&C coach who pretty much works in professional sport, at one time, I think it was early 2013, I got released from my contract there. Just not necessarily a clash of personalities or anything like that. It was, in hindsight, it was probably a good thing. I'd been there 9 years, and time for a freshen up. So with me having married an American, I ended up getting myself a green card and traveling to the US in 2014, and spent 2 years working in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle for a rugby organization who are literally just a company just sitting underneath USA Rugby in terms of its national priority to just increase the participation in rugby and generally build the profile of rugby in North America, which is a really cool and exciting job. And like I said to you off air, it allowed me to travel and see 20 states in America in just under 2 years, or just over 2 years. So that was a really great experience for me, very positive experience, and actually made me kind of appreciate my coaching so much more. And throughout that time, just had a little bit of opportunity to train some potential Olympians, and one of those ended up going to Rio 2016 as a USA Rugby international sevens player on the women's program. So again, a nice little coaching moment for me. That coincided with 2 young children getting to about school age. So from that point of view, I and my wife also made a family decision to move back to the UK. I had 1 year working in a professional cricket side, which was fun, really fun, enjoyable, and I'll maybe share some more about that journey with you as we develop this podcast. But from there, I transitioned out of professional sport and into the academic sector, and I'm now a lecturer in strength and conditioning down in South Wales. And hopefully the next chapter of my career develops into coach mentoring and coach education workshops and wrapping sort of strength and conditioning education around my full-time job.
Well, now that you're able to do the one thing that we weren't able to have, us young pups, back in the day, and that's have a lecturer with some actual foot on the ground experience, how are you seeing that education kind of as a global view, and when it comes to developing the overall picture when it comes to athlete development?
Yeah, I mean, Jay, that's one of the things that I'd like to think is I'm not wanting to just promote the course that I particularly lecture on, but I think one of the key strengths that someone who's had industry experience brings to, the classroom is the fact that the nuances of coaching and the realities of high performance sport are not necessarily written down in black and white in either peer reviewed journals or in the textbooks. I think the reality is, if you've worked on the ground and you've seen and experienced some challenges and overcome them, I think you get to understand sports performance in a much bigger picture snapshot versus oh my God, I've got to make sure they all squat this week, or I've got to make sure they all clean this week. And I think if you've been on the shop floor for a certain amount of time, you recognize that creating adaptation is the important thing. How you create that adaptation is not necessarily everyone's got to squat, everyone's got to deadlift, everyone's got to clean, everyone's got to sprint. Yes, all of those things are vital for the majority of athletes, but also on the flip side of that, when you've got a 35-year-old rugby player who's absolutely banged up from 15 years of playing at the highest level, you've got to be much, much more creative with your solutions. And in that respect, you then become much more of a quality problem solver and also a sort of what I would consider asset manager. So it's not about some of the physical outputs that you provide for them on a week-to-week basis. It's more about, are you providing that athlete the opportunity to be available next week or the week after or the week after, or more importantly, the game at the weekend, which is in professional sport a must-win kind of environment.
I love that because obviously, the people that have listened to our show know that I'm more of a results driven guy. And when you're talking results driven, you threw a curveball in there with the athletes that you've worked with throughout your career when it comes to results. Like it was rugby, cricket, and now to academics. So how is that this broader view um, been impacted by your work in rugby and then possibly almost flipped on its head when dealing with the cricket player?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I know you had Darren Vaness on last week, and we chatted actually after he'd been on the show, and we got talking about some of the challenges I faced there and some of the challenges he faces on a week to week. He's been involved in professional cricket for 2 decades, so he's pretty accomplished. But to come back to you, I think it comes back to that decision making and that process of ultimately being good at problem solving and manipulating variables at very, very short notice. So I always laugh at guys who build these phenomenal 6 to 12 week training programs on Excel spreadsheets, and everything's mapped out and planned to absolutely the nth degree of preciseness. And the reality is, I remember doing it, and it's a boring story, but the player's pretty good. There's a guy called Martin Williams, who's a Welsh international, fantastic player, great servant to the sport. And anyway, long story short, I finished his 6-week training block. This is going back close to a decade now, well, more than a decade, 2007, I think. I built this 6-week training program for him, and I'd finished it on the Friday. We end up playing a rugby match against a team on the Saturday. He breaks his arm. And the reality is that was a sort of aha coaching moment for me. And it kind of stems from how my programming philosophy's evolved since then, regarding having a structural framework that's very, very agile, and you can manipulate and manage it on a daily basis. Because in rugby particularly, you're looking at modifying programming pretty much for 80% of your population. And you're not going to prescribe exactly what you have planned from week to week. The game is a collision-based sport. It doesn't allow you the luxury of 6 weeks of uninterrupted training without a single modification. I would beg a belief if anybody in rugby working in strength and conditioning provides 6 weeks of absolutely perfectly planned stimulus, I'll be amazed.
Oh, I'm sure, because it's the same really with American football, where there's constantly the need of flexibility and almost some form of fluid type periodization due to the workload and all of that. But then you take all that and you go to the cricket pitch, which I still don't understand how it's 4 days long.
Sometimes 5, sometimes no result.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, I guess, from my side, having lived in the US for a while, and obviously teams winning in overtime, and you go to extra time to make sure there's an outcome of a game. I think cricket would be something that blows an American's mind in that respect. But yeah, the challenges of cricket are very, very interesting, and it did, I think, again, lead me to become a better practitioner, because I had to try to influence, and I say try, I had to try and influence athletes' behavior. It's a high skill sport. It's a bit like baseball. You're trying to hit a missile that's flying at you at close to 100 miles an hour. You're playing every other day. You're playing sometimes, like you say, 4 days in a row. But one thing that cricket has is a lot of downtime. And I think if you understand, it's a bit like doing any needs analysis for any sport. If you understand the demands of the sport and you understand an individual player's potential training gaps, you don't need, and this is where I think, again, it's about not necessarily having such a rigid view of, oh my God, I need at least 3 weight training sessions a week. I need at least an hour for a speed session. I need another hour for my energy system development. I think if you're confident enough with the prescription that you can deliver to a player, you can get a strength stimulus out of an athlete in 30 minutes. Make them warm up properly, focus on some mobility restrictions, give them 2 exercises, because 2 exercises is better than no exercises. And it's about, right, what do we got? We've got a time constraint. We've got agility required, because it may be that they can't train on a Monday, especially if you say, for example, an opening batsman who bats all day. Well, great. You've had a physical output that day. You've spent 6 hours facing, like I say, 90-mile-an-hour bowling. You've expended a lot of energy. You've used your physical capacities in the truest sense, in terms of your sports specificities being absolutely the dominant factor today. But it means that tomorrow's likely to be a recovery day, and then it may be the next day we can give you a short, small dose of either speed or strength. Because the focus I had, Jay, in the cricket was you're on your feet 4 to 6 days a week. So in terms of developing your sports-specific energy systems and your sports-specific skills, you're getting plenty of that exposure. So what do I want? I want to focus on the highest quality physical outputs, which for me are maintaining your speed, because inevitably you also, by dosing speed, create a little bit of robustness around, hamstring health and all that kind of stuff. And obviously the same applied for the strength stimulus. I thought if I can get at least 2 30 to 45-minute weight sessions out of these guys every week, they're building that little bit of resilience for the outputs that they're required to put in, week out, for 6 months straight on the cricket field. So that was my main focus. 2 to 3 exposures of some sort of high quality physical output a week. And as we talked about just briefly off air, it really then became important to give that athlete the opportunity, or at least educate them when it comes to looking after their soft tissue work, looking after and making better choices from the nutritional standpoint. And that way you're just wrapping other performance variables into your program. And it's not just, let's just focus on the physical. Let's make sure your hydration's a little bit better. Let's make sure instead of drinking 4 beers each night, you drink 2 beers each night. You make better choices. And that sounds ridiculous, but for those who know cricket, and I'm sure it may be similar in baseball, I'm not sure, there's a fair few guys who love a beer, and there's a fair few guys who love a beer 4 to 6 times a week. And that's going to add up, and that's going to impact on your performance for obvious reasons. So those kind of decisions and that kind of, I guess, influencing behavioral change would have been something that I really, really had to focus hard on to make an impact in that particular environment. Does that make sense?
1,000%. And let's keep running down that rabbit hole. What are some ways? Because I'll tell you right now, when it comes to athletes in the U.S. right now, I think that behavioral change is probably the hardest thing that we're seeing when it comes to eliciting that in the entire training process. So what are some ways that you had some success with that, with all of those different ways, like all those different things you talk about?
Well, I think it goes back to sort of the coach, and I take some sort of, it's more retrospective, but Jeremy Shepherd up in Canada now, it's kind of that servant, and we are serving, and I think that's the attitude that I have as a coach. I'm there to serve the athlete, but I'm not there to basically wipe the backside of the athlete, but I'm there to serve the athlete. I'm trying to do my best so that they perform on the field as often as possible. So, for example, it would be even me, and I'm 40-something years old, and I'm not ashamed to say it, I'd make protein smoothies, for example. And I have no issue standing at the blender, putting in the blueberries, the banana, the protein drink, the whatever else. I'd hide as my best, well, one of my good friends in England will say, Darren Roberts, he loves a name check in a podcast as well, so he'll love that. But Darren says hide the broccoli. And that's in terms of delivering a stimulus to an athlete as well as delivering them some good quality nutrition. So what I might do is make a banana and peanut butter smoothie and just chuck some spinach in there and some blueberries or whatever. So I just subtly made an impact on the quality of input into an athlete's diet by just literally making some quality smoothies, having a little bit more say in the kitchen when it came to, guys, let's plan these meals for our athletes a little bit more successfully. And then you're actually then sitting around you spend a lot of time with athletes, especially in cricket. You sit around the table and you're just, you're beavering away at talking to the people about making better choices. You're talking about influencing them subliminally. So for me, I was very fortunate that I worked in for Cardiff Blues, but in Welsh rugby when a guy called Craig White was very prevalent, and I think you may have heard that name before. He's very, very accomplished rugby strength and conditioning coach, but he was brilliant on signage and just visuals and putting big signs all over the training building that would be. The first one was it was titled "Are You Tired?" and it had a 12-point checklist about living the lifestyle of a quality professional athlete. It was hydration. It was, do you eat organic produce? Do you drink high quality recovery shakes? Do you have soft tissue work? Do you sleep the same amount of hours a night, etc., etc.? But that was kind of how I evolved my practice to just influence athletes face to face over dinner, vegetables, hydration, just chip away, protein, whatever it may be. And I'm not a nutritionist, but I know that eating fast food and eating nutrient dense food are two different things, and they make you feel two different ways. And that's where I kind of got my level of interest into, right, I might not be making the massive difference in physical output, but in terms of performance, I'm making a difference because I'm actually trying to initiate behavioral change in these athletes so that they make better choices more often. And that's the kind of thing that I've continued to run with outside of my performance coach kind of career and into my academic career and through my extension of my professional network now. There's a guy, he works with yachting, America's Cup yachting. His name's Ben Williams. He's a fantastic practitioner because he's one of those guys who appreciates how many jigsaw pieces go together to impact on performance. And nutrition and nutritional science is a big focal area for immunity, for performance, for fueling the demands of your sport. All that stuff that we both know is so important. But still, like you said, a lot of athletes come to training base, haven't had breakfast, haven't had a single sip of water, whatever it may be. Simple things that can impact on how they feel and perform every single day.
I love that. And let's keep going down that direction too. So how is this then carried into academia with what you're doing today?
Well, I think for me, I know it's an important area to provide students with the fundamentals of exercise science and the reps and sets, the regressions, the progressions, the matrices. But a lot of for me, particularly in the third year of their undergraduate studies, you're looking at performance management. You're looking at programs that are maneuverable and go with the flow of understanding traditional periodization methodologies, but also on the flip side of that, integrating what a good friend of mine has put into practice a long time ago as well. I know I've dropped a few names today, but Ashley Jones, who again was a national level strength and conditioning coach with the New Zealand All Blacks and the Australian rugby union team, amongst other very high profile organizations. But it's about this conjugated, vertically integrated. So I know the guys like Charlie Francis have got this kind of, or did have this periodization type mechanism. It's where essentially everything has to be trained at every given time. But what you provide the athlete with most as a priority is obviously their training weakness, and not necessarily just their training weakness, but you can train their strengths as well. So I think for me, it's understanding that some of the periodization methodologies of yesteryear are a little bit flawed, but also I think, again, just talking about it from a contextual point of view when it comes to what I would consider storytelling. It's always good to have real life performance examples to back up some of the narrative that you're kind of speaking. So, for example, that broken arm scenario is a good one. You can tell a story that resonates with a coach or with an athlete or with a student. Listen, I'm encouraging you to plan. I'm encouraging you to plan thoroughly, but I'm also, on the flip side of that, encouraging you to think about the potential problem solving and solutions you may need that aren't necessarily stuck to this 6-week program. Are you with me?
100%.
So you're coming from it from two sides. You think this is what the theory and this is what the textbook and this is what some of the peer review is telling you, but you've also got to critically evaluate and think outside of that. And it's great. A really good example would be J.B. Moran. So J.B. Moran, you guys have come across J.B. Moran. He's a French sports scientist. He's just really spent a lot of the last maybe decade proving what some of the rugby strength and conditioning coaches have been doing for maybe 15 or 20 years, which is heavy sled towing has a positive impact on, carrying effectiveness and acceleration, even though some of the purists would say, oh no, you can't add more than 10% body weight to the sled because that mechanical dysfunction is just going to be so apparent. But it's like, well, hold on a minute, because in the field of rugby preparation in the early 2000s, we were doing very, very heavy sled tows, and we're talking 100 kgs, 225 pounds on a sled, and some of the most high quality physical outputs in some people's training weeks would just be 6 to 8 reps of heavy sled tows. That would be their strength and power programming. That's all they were doing. Because going back full circle, squatting wasn't great for them because they were banged up. Deadlifting wasn't an option, and power clean certainly wasn't an option with the elbows and the shoulder problems. So you had to think of a solution. So how do we load an athlete? Well, let's do some heavy sled tows. We didn't do any research on it. Thankfully, now the research is caught up with the practitioner, and everyone's going, whoa, this is cool. I can literally sled tow with 80 kgs. Yeah, of course you can. And guess what? You'll have some seriously quality, good outputs from it as well, and have a training effect that you want.
And one that has direct carryover.
Absolutely. The transfer was huge. And then, it started to carry on. It started to pick up. And now everyone's like, yeah, this is cool. But it's great that the validation of scientific evidence proves that something that practitioners have been doing for a fairly long time is obviously an effective method of, transfer of force application horizontally. Beautiful.
I love it. So now, looking to the future, where does Chris see that academic involvement continuing to progress forward in our world of strength and conditioning / performance / whatever the next term is going to be to describe what we do?
No, brilliant. I think this is a great touch point, because right now I think there's a lot of, I don't know which social media platforms you use, but some of the stuff that I see, we can't get away from social media. It has lots of positives, it has a few negatives, we both know that. But the thread that I keep seeing is that universities particularly are producing academics who are very limited in their application of the theory. So that's the challenge we've got to overcome as academics, is provide a little bit more real life, well, two things: real life opportunity for young coaches to get immersed in coaching first and foremost, make mistakes coaching. I don't care whether you coach under 9s, or I don't care whether you coach under 15s. I don't care whether you coach senior men, senior women. I just want you to immerse yourself in the coaching process. So first and foremost, kids and young students have got to get their hands dirty as much as they can. Practical application for me has the highest possible carryover. You have to still, on the flip side of that, have a balance of fundamental knowledge and competency that allows you then to carry that into a training environment, whether that's field-based training environment, gym-based training environment, the complete environment. And the other thing about that, and again, not wanting to big Ben up again too much, but what I love about Ben Williams at Ionos, the yachting crew, is that you're then immersing coaches not just in the training process, but you're immersing coaches and exposing them to, right, spend a week with the nutritionist, see what's going on in the nutrition realm, then go and spend a week with the soft tissue therapist. And chances are you as a practitioner will get much more rounded into, okay, well, this part of what I'm doing meshes really nicely with the thing that the soft tissue therapist is doing. And in conjunction with both of those things, what the nutritionist is trying to do is one, keep this athlete healthy. And then you start to build, like we've just kind of taken a few steps back, is build a much more global appreciation that it's not just what I'm doing with this athlete or this sports person that's making a difference. It's what we all do with that sports person is making a difference. And they will then be more available. They'll be injury free. They will perform optimally more often. They will give us the output we need. But all of us need input into that. And that's the biggest challenge I have, where when you're a young coach, and I was the same, and I'm sure you were the same, I needed to make sure that I did my bit and I delivered my hour of weight training, my hour of speed training, my hour of energy system development work, because otherwise I didn't feel, this is me as a young coach, I didn't feel like I was accomplishing what I needed to accomplish. But now I'm much more confident because of the skill set that I've developed over 15, 20 years, to be comfortable to say, hey, I only need half an hour with this guy. You spend the extra half hour doing what they need to do away from me to become a better player. And that was a big, big thing for me. I think I had probably 4 or 5 years where I didn't get that. And then I had probably 7 to 10 years where I was like, yeah, even if I do less, I can impact more. And I think that's kind of I'm hoping that's sort of some of the biggest messaging I can pass on over the last sort of 20 so years.
Sensational. That's absolutely fantastic. So, Chris, let's get you out on this. Where can people find more? Where can they keep up with what you're doing, and where can they get in touch with you?
So I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I'm trying to keep up with the kids. I'm Chris Toom 71, very very unoriginal. It's my name and my birth year. But yeah, Chris Toom 71 on Twitter and on Instagram. And yeah, mate, it's great. It's been a real pleasure to chew the fat with you. And yeah, hopefully I can do it again soon.
Yeah, 100%, man. This is absolutely sensational. People are going to love it. I can't thank you enough for your time, Chris. This is great stuff.
Thanks, Jay. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, we'll be in touch real soon, bud. Thank you so much for your time.
Brilliant. Cheers. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, man.
Bye.
And a huge thanks to Chris Toombs for spending the time with us today. Guys, just open, honest, candid sharing from a guy who's kind of done it all, right? He's been a high-level coach. He's been around the world and seen it through multiple lenses of different sports in different cultures, and now trying to give back and help the future be better. Chris, I can't thank you enough for all you're doing for all of us to be better, man. Keep up the great work. We truly appreciate everything you're doing. And as always, if you did enjoy the talk, please share it through the social media outlet of your choice. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. As always, we are just trying to get the best information out there to all the great coaches that we can. And as always, guys, thank you for everything that you do for us here at Central Virginia Sport Performance. We will be back next week with another awesome guest. We will see you then.